NewsX World, let's take a look at the top headlines. China has staged its largest ever military parade in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to mark 80 years since the end of the Second World War, with Chinese President Xi Jinping declaring that the world faces a choice between peace or war. Other leaders, including Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong Un, joined Xi. US President Donald Trump has slammed Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong Un on Truth Social, claiming that there's a conspiracy against the United States of America. He has also honored American soldiers who died supporting China's victory against Japan in the Second World War, hoping that their sacrifices are remembered. Russian defense systems have destroyed 105 Ukrainian drones overnight amid ongoing conflict. This comes as Kiev and its allies have rejected compromises, while Russia and the US are coordinating dates as well as a venue for the next round of talks, according to reports. Donald Trump has stated that he's monitoring the Russia-Ukraine war after 7,313 casualties last week. Expressed hope for an end. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has called Putin a major war criminal and has emphasized the need for a ceasefire. He has also advocated for economic measures to undermine Russia's war economy. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has praised IDF soldiers and reservists for their sacrifices, acknowledging the difficult decisions made during the war. He has affirmed that Israel's success against Hamas and the Iranian axis, including the Hezbollah and the Houthis, have now made sure that Israel has entered a decisive phase towards total victory. French President Emmanuel Macron has criticized the US's decision to deny visas to Palestinian officials ahead of the UN General Assembly, calling it unacceptable. He has stressed upon international support for a two-state solution, ceasefire, hostage release, and humanitarian aid in Gaza. Thailand's Pheu Thai party has submitted a parliament dissolution for royal approval. The opposition has backed the Bhumjai Thai leader Anutin Chanvirakul for Prime Minister's bid. It plans to hold a house vote and continue with a minority government. A bomb blast has killed at least 11 people and injured 30 others at a rally in Quetta in southwestern Pakistan, commemorating nationalist leader Sardar Ataullah Mengal, who was also a provincial chief minister. Authorities now say that it appears to be a suicide attack with investigations underway and no group claiming responsibility. Well, those were the headlines and our top focus. The Russian Defense Ministry has stated that Russian air defenses intercepted and destroyed 105 Ukrainian drones overnight across multiple regions. The drones were shot down over areas including Rostov, Crimea and Krasnodar, as well as the Black Sea. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova has stated that Kiev and its allies have rejected any compromises on settling the ongoing conflict. Despite rising tensions, Russia and the United States are working to coordinate the next round of bilateral talks, aiming to find a diplomatic path forward. The upcoming discussions come amid ongoing conflict and international efforts to ease the crisis in Ukraine. Joining us on the broadcast is Professor Vasilin Popovsky. He is the Vice Dean of Jindal Global Law School. He's joining us live on the broadcast. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. It finally seems that Russia has now come out and stated that it is coordinating with US officials for a bilateral meeting in order to take forward negotiations. But does any such meeting really hold weight if Ukraine is not on the negotiating table, if Ukraine is not included?
Well, obviously not. Ukraine should be on a negotiated table. Certainly, this is the victim of war over the last 3.5 years. So no solution can be taken anywhere else, in Alaska, in China, in Washington, without Ukraine being there. But I don't see much happening. I don't see Russia is serious in stopping the war first and foremost. They could have accepted a ceasefire 7 months ago, something Donald Trump suggested, and Ukraine immediately accepted. If Russia doesn't want a ceasefire, which could be limited to only 10 or 20 or 30 days, how can one kind of expect Russia to sit on negotiation table? Moreover, the demands by Russia are basically for Ukraine to cease to exist as an independent country. Obviously, not acceptable, absolutely ridiculous, I might say, are the demands by Russia on Ukraine. They have absolutely no legitimacy, no justification. And putting such demands by Russia means that that meeting could never happen. Certainly, because nobody will accept that. Neither Ukrainians, nor the Europeans, nor anybody reasonable in the world will accept the Russian demands. Effectively, what they want is the whole Donbas region, which they couldn't conquer for 3.5 years. So after 1,300 days of war, Russia is nowhere even near to conquer Donbas. In fact, there are calculations that with this speed of Russian military advancement in Donbas, they will need 4.5 years more to get only the region they are claiming, the Donbas region, not to mention the rest of the vast Ukrainian territory. So effectively, Russia cannot conquer with military means anything significant. So the negotiation for Russia is to get through diplomacy what they cannot get through military. And it's also ridiculous. Nobody will give up. Ukrainians are fighting for their lives. They are very committed. They are very determined. They are supported by 150 countries in the world. 55 countries support Ukraine with military equipment and weapons and logistical assistance and finances. So negotiations will only happen when Russia is under severe pressure, including from the US administration. But this is something we don't see. Yesterday was the deadline, another deadline, which Donald Trump imposed. And after that deadline, Trump doesn't impose more pressure, more sanctions on Russia. So Donald Trump is useless here. Everything he says has absolutely no relevance to any peace agreement.
All right, I request you to stay on with us, sir, as we are tracking further information coming as far as the war is discussed. We're now learning that German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has ruled out sending troops to Ukraine before a ceasefire is in place, calling Russian President Vladimir Putin perhaps the most serious war criminal of this era. He has stated that there is no place, for leniency. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico also plans to raise attacks, especially that have taken place against energy facilities during his upcoming meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He is going to raise these, especially considering Slovakia's dependence on Russian energy. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump has stated that he wants to see the war end after meetings with Putin and Zelensky. He has noted that over 7,000 soldiers from both sides were lost last week and has warned of consequences if no progress is made towards a peace deal. Trump has supported land swapping as part of any settlement, a proposal that Ukraine opposes but may have to concede as Russia controls about a fifth of its territory. Listen in to what the leaders have had to say.
Es ist ein Kriegsverbrecher. Es ist vielleicht der schwerste Kriegsverbrecher unserer Zeit, den wir zurzeit im großen Maßstab sehen. Und wir müssen uns einfach darüber im Klaren sein, wie man mit Kriegsverbrechern umgeht. Da ist Nachgiebigkeit fehl am Platz. Er hat im Augenblick überhaupt keinen Grund, sich einem Waffenstillstand oder gar einem Friedensabkommen zu nähern. Den Grund müssen wir schaffen. Militärisch wird das schwierig, aber ökonomisch kann das gehen. Man muss dafür sorgen, dass dieses Land Russland nicht weiter in der Lage ist, die Kriegswirtschaft aufrechtzuerhalten. Also ich spreche in diesem Zusammenhang von einer ökonomischen Erschöpfung, die wir mit herbeiführen müssen, zum Beispiel durch Zölle auf diejenigen, die immer noch mit Russland eifrig Handel betreiben. Und da sind wir wieder bei Amerika.
Yeah, I don't want to. I have learned things that will be very interesting. I think in the next few days you'll find out. We're going to see what happens. We're going to see what they do and what happens. I'm watching it very closely. Last week they lost 7,000 between the two countries. 7,313 soldiers, to be somewhat exact, for no reason whatsoever. And they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, but you know they're soldiers. I want to see it end.
Opakujem, veľmi ostro reagujeme na útoky na ropnú infraštruktúru, ktoré tu boli. Ja sa mám stretnúť v piatok v Užhorode s prezidentom Ukrajiny a budem túto otázku veľmi vážne otvárať. Toto nie je možné, aby takýmto spôsobom sa útočilo na infraštruktúru, ktorá je pre Slovensko životne dôležitá. Preto chcem veľmi otvorene, pán prezident, povedať na tomto stretnutí, že nám mimoriadne záleží na štandardizácii vzťahov medzi Slovenskou republikou a Ruskou federáciou. Chcem navrhnúť čo najrýchlejšie stretnutie zmiešanej komisie. Vráťme sa naspäť k tomu, čo bolo typické pre naše krajiny, pokiaľ ide o hospodárskú spoluprácu. Hľadajme prieniky, kde môžu naše krajiny veľmi úspešne spolupracovať.
All right, still with us on the broadcast is Professor Popovsky. We've heard what the leaders have had to say. We do know that earlier when Zelensky had met Trump at the Oval Office, Trump had made it very clear that any security guarantee for Ukraine would not entail US boots on the ground. It also seems that although Europe did consider this proposal, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has now come out and ruled out sending troops to Ukraine before a ceasefire is in place. Is this indicative of European nations now bending towards what the US is already doing?
Yes, there are several European countries that already suggested troops on the ground, so Americans are not needed there. Americans can provide air defense, air support, intelligence, and many, many other things, financial support, and so on. So there will be a kind of a division of labor who will do what once the ceasefire is achieved. And yes, absolutely no surprise here. Germany may decide or may not decide, but there will be plenty of British, French, Polish, and other countries that will supply the necessary troops, the necessary equipment. There is no doubt about that Ukraine will get security guarantees very close to what Article 5 of the NATO treaty does, basically supporting Ukraine on any future attack. Russia should not dare to shoot a bullet to Ukraine anymore, because that will trigger a massive response by all NATO members. Again, Russia rejects that, and it's another kind of a sign of lack of cooperation from Moscow to talk about security guarantees for Ukraine. They can mention that, but they don't mean anything. There cannot be a Russian security guarantee. It can only be European and American. Obviously, there is absolutely no doubt about that. There is absolutely no trust in any Russian proposal anymore. Russia violated the 1994 Budapest Agreement, which included security guarantees, by the way. Ukraine is demanding what all those countries already promised in 1994, and they never delivered. So obviously, from now on, the stand will be very firm, and it will be what does Ukraine want.
Indeed, so I want to ask a quick follow-up. We do know that there was a deal inked yesterday between Russia and China as far as energy cooperation between these two countries is concerned. They've signed an agreement to construct the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline through Mongolia. The deal was announced by Gazprom CEO after talks had taken place in China. To what extent will this further frustrate the West?
Well, my understanding is it will take 4 or 5 years to build that pipeline. Good, let them try, let them do that. Maybe a future Russian president will be much better than Vladimir Putin. Maybe a future Chinese president will be much better than Xi Jinping. So it's kind of a long-term plan to build a pipeline. I wonder why they didn't build it so far. Maybe because China had other sources of supply. It may look like China is already thinking of taking full control of Siberia itself. The collapse of Russia means China will have a lot of appetite in Siberia, including to energy sources, including to oil and gas. So it's definitely not good news for Russia. Russia is becoming a slave of China over long term. And that's absolutely understandable because of the horrible policies by Vladimir Putin over the last 20 years. Russia, if it doesn't change its course, if it doesn't stop war, if it continues to act like that, one day will be totally destroyed and easy prey for Chinese appetite in Siberia.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Shifting focus to more updates coming in, French President Emmanuel Macron has criticized the US's decision to deny visas to Palestinian officials for the upcoming UN General Assembly. He's called it unacceptable and has demanded that this move be reversed. Macron has made these remarks after talks with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ahead of their joint conference on the two-state solution in New York later this month. He stressed upon the importance of broad international support to achieve a two-state solution, stating that no military action or annexations should derail any sort of progress. Joining us on the broadcast is Matti Zweig, a geopolitical expert, joining us from Israel. Thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX, where we've seen not only France but also Belgium come out in support of a two-state solution. Australia has also indicated that it will be supporting any sort of resolution that is put forth in the UNGA later this month. But what are the chances of this resolution being accepted, and how much weight does it really hold, considering it's the UNSC that's the main decision-making body that could affect the course of this war?
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, this is not real. You have to understand, who are all the time talking about Palestinians, Palestinian rights, two-state solutions? The countries that they are unstable in their inside, in their political arena, like especially France and Belgium. Belgium because of the growing Muslim influence inside the country and the Muslim voters. And also Macron. Macron, look, I can understand he support the Palestinian cause. I can understand he would like that many people to have a wishful thinking of two-state solutions. But now he passed from supporting them to talking against Trump that is banning entry visas to Palestinian students or officials. I mean, what is the next step to take care of the welfare of Palestinians in Malaysia and in Canada? I mean, this is really not logical. And what I can think is that Macron, especially Macron, is under a lot of pressure, political internal pressure, that he looks what's going on in the next elections in France. It's going to be a big split between the extreme right with all the acolytes and people around Le Pen or another names, and the extreme left with Mélenchon and others. So he's looking forward, he has no political support, and he's trying to capture the Muslim voters that are growing inside France. And he's proposing things that he tried to do and convince the US before the UN Assembly, but things we know they are not going to change. And I don't think they are going forward and given a prize in this moment, not to the Palestinian Authority, but to Hamas, with everything they did. And this is a moral bias. Believe me, this cannot go on, and it's going to disappear as long as Macron feel that he's gaining some political gain from all this.
Indeed, sir. I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking more news and updates, this time from South America. We're now learning that the United States military has killed 11 people in a strike on a Venezuelan vessel that was allegedly carrying illegal narcotics. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has stated that the boat had departed from Venezuela and was struck in the southern Caribbean. Listen in to what he said.
That suffice it to say that the president is going to be on offense against drug cartels and drug trafficking in the United States. It destabilizes not just the country, but the entire Caribbean basin. These particular drugs were probably headed to Trinidad or some other country in the Caribbean, at which point they just contribute to the instability these countries are facing. So the president's been very clear that he's going to use the full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels, no matter where they're operating from and no matter how long they've been able to act with impunity. Those days are over.
Meanwhile, the U.S. president has told reporters that the U.S. military shot down a drug-carrying boat. He's also shared this video that you can see on your screens at the moment on his social media platform, Truth Social. You can clearly see overhead drones above a speedboat that is then exploding. Trump added that the U.S. military had identified the crew as members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, which the U.S. had designated as a terrorist group earlier this year. The United States has deployed warships in the southern Caribbean to follow through on Trump's pledge to crack down on drug cartels. While the U.S. Coast Guard and Navy ships regularly operate in the region, the current buildup exceeds the usual deployments. The strike is the first known operation since the Trump administration's surge of warships in the region. The Pentagon has not released specifics about the attack, including what kind of drugs were on board, the quantity, or how the strike was carried out. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Matty Swake. Thank you for staying put and for your patience as we were tracking these developments. So we've seen how the U.S. naval deployment in the Caribbean, especially of the coast of Venezuela, has increased quite significantly over the last couple of weeks. The U.S. claims that this is in order to ensure a purge of the illegal drug nexus that brings drugs from Venezuela, mostly cocaine, into the United States of America. Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has called this a threat to Venezuelan sovereignty. Where do you see the tensions heading next?
Well, first of all, we have to clarify if the word sovereignty and sovereign country includes the right to traffic in drugs and to be a narco state and to sell them in the States and in other parts of the world. If the word sovereign is part of this, this is very strange. Anyway, I think this is a step forward in a policy that is finally, after many years, linking the reality facts that they are the terrorism of some states like Venezuela or Iran. They are connected completely with the drug trafficking and making money with this drug trafficking for themselves and for their terrorist goals. So now Trump said that this is a step forward. We are linking these two words, the words trafficking with drugs and the words terrorism, and we are attacking them as they were terrorists. It means from the air and killing them too. In this case, it's one vessel from many, many vessels and other kind of transport that has been done by Tren of Aragua movement, which lately Trump said that the head of all this Tren of Aragua is the President Maduro himself. Anyway, the big question that rises from this, and I think through the years everyone asked themselves, what is the DEA doing in the States when they are attacking one drug cartel but not attacking others? And then they raise the questions that if they is attacking for political purposes Maduro and his real drug trafficking, why he's not completely crushing on the other ways of trafficking with the United States? It means from Colombia to Central America, through Mexico, through the States. Is he doing enough in that way too, or is only Maduro because he's a political opponent? And from the other side of the axis of evil, as he says, together with Iran, North Korea, and other countries.
So with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World as we track these crucial developments. Viewers, we're staying put as we have more developments coming in from South America. We're now learning that the Brazilian Supreme Court is pushing forward with the final phase of former President Jair Bolsonaro's coup plotting trial, despite growing pressure from the United States President Donald Trump. Justice Alexandre de Moraes, whom the Trump administration has imposed sanctions on over the trial, has stated that a criminal organization had tried to coerce the High Court to submit to the scrutiny of a foreign state. Bolsonaro was charged with 5 counts relating to attempting to stage a coup. He is an ideological and political ally of Trump. Trump has stated that he is being targeted in a politically motivated witch hunt for his conservative views. The final phase of the trial is expected to conclude by the 12th of September. Since this is information regarding Brazil's internal political developments, we will continue to track these. Shifting focus from what's happening within Brazil to what's happening within Australia. Thousands of Australians have taken to the streets on Sunday to participate in anti-immigration demonstrations across the country. The centre-left government has condemned the marches, saying that they were associated with neo-Nazis and intended to incite hatred. The events, organised under the banner March for Australia, took place in Sydney, other state capitals and rural areas as well. In Sydney, between 5,000 and 8,000 participants gathered, many waving Australian flags near the marathon route where 35,000 runners were participating. Organisers have claimed the demonstrations were against mass migration, which they say has strained community bonds, sparking debate nationwide over immigration policies. Joining us on the broadcast is Jyotharth Bharadwaj. He's managing editor at the Australia Today, joining us live from Melbourne. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. We've seen a rise in anti-immigrant sentiments take place across the world, whether it is the United States, whether it is Japan, Europe for that matter as well. Now we're seeing anti-immigration demonstrations that are taking place in Australia too. Could you explain to our viewers across the world what exactly is happening on the ground? Why are we seeing a rise in such far-right protectionist movements in Australia too? Sir, can you hear me? Mr. Bharadwaj, am I audible? Yes, please go ahead. All right, there seems to be a connectivity issue as far as Jyotharth Bharadwaj's connection is concerned. We're learning that thousands of Australians have taken to streets to participate in anti-immigration demonstrations across the country. The centre-left government has condemned the marches, saying they were associated with neo-Nazis and intended to incite hatred. I believe Mr. Bharadwaj is back with us on the broadcast. I was, of course, asking you earlier, why are we seeing this rise in anti-immigration sentiment in Australia as well? We've seen similar such protests take place from the United States to Europe to Japan.
See, it's a global phenomena that the local Westerners are rising against the migration or the success of migrants in these countries. And Australia is not different from them. It has been happening through MAGA in America. You have seen a lot of protests in UK and Canada. Now it was turn of Australia on 31st of August, Sunday, and we saw a huge crowds of not only white Australians who were protesting, but also a number of multicultural Australians were there in these protests, saying that unsustained mass migration is not the answer to the development of these countries, including Australia. If we talk specifically about Australia, then I would say the first initial poster which we saw almost a week and a half back, where Indian Australian community was specifically mentioned, and it was said that in 5 years, a large number of Indian Australians have come to Australia. If they wanted to calculate against Greek and Italians who have come in last 100 years, that was racist, and it was called out as racist. And probably the organizational structure behind this march for Australia also realized that they have targeted the wrong community. After that, we didn't see any poster. After that, we didn't see any other mention of Indian Australians. Politicians from the Prime Minister's office to the Premier's office, or ministers, opposition leaders, community leaders, faith leaders, everyone condemned these posters where Indian Australians were specifically targeted. So what we consider is there was a op-ed written by opposition leader of Victoria, Ewan Mullahan. I would like to mention that he says that this anger probably should not be vented against the migrant communities. There is issues about housing, there are issues about healthcare, there are issues about job security. But these issues are because the governments have not paid proper attention to these issues. They have not solved these issues the way probably people would have liked them to solve it. That's why these issues are there. And venting anger against migrants is misplaced. That's what he said. And especially Indian Australian community, it's contributes so much to Australia that it shouldn't be the case. So I would say, well, somewhere anger is justified, but that anger venting towards multicultural communities is definitely not. Pia?
All right, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time, sharing your perspective on what is happening in Australia. We've, of course, been seeing similar such movements, as I pointed out earlier, take place within the United States, within European nations as well, and in Japan too. Meanwhile, shifting focus towards Thailand, Thai politics is in chaos as the ruling Pheu Thai party has stated that it has sought royal approval to dissolve the parliament for a new election. This has come moments after the biggest group in the House has stated that it would back another party to form a government. Now, according to reports, the chief whip of the Pheu Thai party, which last week suffered the loss of its prime minister, who was indicted by court, Petongtan Shinawatra, the party has decided to forge ahead with seeking a snap election. The report states that Thailand's ruling Pheu Thai party is still seeking time to form the next government and is prepared to dissolve the parliament, a move that could trigger the general election. Amid escalating political turmoil as two rival camps are vying to form the next government, Pheu Thai Secretary General Sorawong Thianthong has stated that the party was considering whether to nominate its own candidate Chaikasem Nitisiri for the Prime Minister's post or push for a new election entirely. Let's hear what Nathampong Ruenpanyawut, People's Party leader, had to say.
วันนี้คณะกรรมการบริหารของพรรคจึงได้ประชุมและมีมติว่าหากมีการประชุมสภาผู้แทนราษฎรเพื่อให้ความเห็นชอบเลือกนายกรัฐมนตรีคนใหม่พรรคประชาชนจะให้ความเห็นชอบแก่คุณอนุทินชาญวีรกูลหัวหน้าพรรคภูมิใจไทยพวกเราตัดสินใจโดยมีเป้าหมายเพื่อจะนำพาประเทศไปสู่ทางออก ตามวิถีทางของระบอบประชาธิปไตยแบบรัฐสภาป้องกันอำนาจนอกระบบเข้าแทรกแซงปลดล็อกการจัดทำรัฐธรรมนูญฉบับใหม่และคืนอำนาจให้กับประชาชนโดยเร็วที่สุดครับ
All right, viewers, with that, it's a wrap on this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned.